You know what's strange about people who grew up navigating things they never should have had to navigate? They don't always end up fragile. Sometimes they end up quietly, almost invisibly brilliant. Not the kind of brilliant that gets applauded in a classroom, the kind that reads a room before anyone else even senses something is off, the kind that knows exactly when to speak and exactly when silence is a safer choice, the kind that can sit across from someone in crisis and feel almost nothing shake inside them, because crisis for them was never unfamiliar. Most people call this a gut feeling. They call it being mature for your age. They call it an old soul. But almost nobody asks the actual question: where did this come from? Psychologists have started calling it traumatic intelligence, a specific measurable form of cognitive adaptation that develops in people who had to grow perceptive out of necessity, not curiosity. Here's the psychological premise. When a child grows up needing to anticipate danger, tension, or emotional volatility, their brain doesn't just survive that environment. It restructures itself around it. The amygdala sharpens its threat response. Pattern recognition circuits activate earlier and far more often than they would in a stable household. The result isn't classic intelligence, the kind measured by tests. It's something quieter and in many ways more useful. A mind built to understand what's actually happening beneath the surface of any given moment. Here are 10 signs this kind of intelligence lives in you. Just before we continue, my name is Jenna, and we just launched this channel for people passionate about psychology and human behavior. Just like you, the goal is to understand the hidden mechanisms behind people, emotions, and social interactions. If you want to help us keep going and improve the videos, think about subscribing. It's free, and it makes a huge difference for us. Okay, let's continue. Sign 1. You finished other people's sentences emotionally before they do. You often sense what someone is about to say, not the words themselves, but the emotional direction seconds before they say it. A friend starts a story and you already feel where the sadness is buried in it. A coworker begins a routine update and you already know from something in their pacing that it's going to end in bad news. This isn't mind reading, and it isn't a party trick. Researchers studying early social development describe this as anticipatory affect tracking, the ability to predict someone's emotional trajectory from the earliest available cues, tone, breath, posture, before language even catches up. It typically develops in children who needed to read a caregiver's mood shifts quickly, because getting it wrong carried real consequences. The cost is that conversations sometimes feel like watching a film you've already seen twice. You know where it's going before anyone else in the room does, and there's a specific kind of loneliness in that. The gift is that people feel unusually understood around you, often before they've even finished understanding themselves. Sign 2. You can sit in silence without needing to fill it. Most people rush to fill an awkward pause, laughing too quickly, changing the subject, saying something just to say something. You don't. Silence doesn't unsettle you. If anything, it settles you. This often develops in households where speaking at the wrong moment carried a cost, where a badly timed comment could shift the entire atmosphere of a room. The nervous system learns early and thoroughly that stillness can be strategic rather than empty. It's not withdrawal, it's calibration. As an adult, this becomes a genuinely rare social skill. People instinctively feel safer talking to you because you're not visibly performing your next sentence while they're still speaking. You're actually there. The cost is that stillness in your own life can sometimes tip into something heavier, an inability to simply relax into quiet without your mind quietly working underneath it. Sign 3, you notice exits before you notice decor. Walk into any unfamiliar room, and part of your brain automatically maps it. Where the exits are, who's sitting where, who's watching whom. This isn't paranoia in the clinical sense. It's habit, deeply grooved. This matches what researchers call hypervigilant spatial mapping, a heightened environmental scanning pattern that forms early in unpredictable environments and rarely fully switches off. Even decades later, even in places that are completely safe, the exhausting part is that this scanning runs constantly, quietly draining attention in rooms that never actually required it. The useful part is that you're almost never caught off guard. Small shifts in a room, tension building before an argument, someone about to leave early, register to you long before they register to anyone else. Sign 4, you forgive quickly, but you never fully forget the pattern. You're not someone who holds dramatic grudges. You move on. You're civil, often even warm, toward people who've hurt you. But underneath that surface, a quiet internal file stays open, tracking whether the same pattern repeats. Psychologists sometimes call this behavioral pattern archiving. It isn't bitterness, and it isn't an inability to let go. It's a protective system built from learning early and repeatedly that forgiveness and safety are two completely separate decisions. You can forgive someone and still quietly keep the receipts. The cost is that full, uncomplicated trust becomes rare, even with people who've genuinely changed. The gift is that you're remarkably difficult to fool twice by the same person in the same way. Sign 5, you're calm in emergencies and restless during routine. When something goes visibly wrong, an accident, a sudden crisis, a friend falling apart mid-sentence, something in you steadies instead of panicking. Your thinking sharpens. You become useful exactly when usefulness is needed most. But an ordinary, uneventful afternoon can leave you strangely on edge, restlessly searching for a task, a problem, a fire that isn't actually there. This mirrors what's sometimes called arousal recalibration, a nervous system whose baseline was set by unpredictability so that genuine calm feels unfamiliar, even mildly untrustworthy. The paradox is exact. You function beautifully in the conditions that break other people and struggle quietly in the conditions that are supposed to be restful. Sign 6, you read tone over words almost automatically. You often remember exactly how something was said far more vividly than what was actually said. A slightly clipped "I'm fine" lands louder in your memory than an entire reassuring paragraph would. This reflects heightened paralinguistic processing, the brain's ability to extract meaning from tone, pace, and micro pauses rather than vocabulary alone. This skill sharpens fastest in environments where tone, not content, was the thing that actually predicted whether a situation was about to get worse. The cost is that you sometimes hear threat or distance in tone that genuinely isn't there, a false alarm triggered by an old, well-earned habit. The gift is that you catch real distress in people almost nobody else notices long before they say a word about it. Sign 7, you over-prepare for things that probably won't go wrong. Before a normal conversation, a routine appointment, even a casual dinner, part of your mind quietly runs contingency scenarios. Most of them never happen. You know this, and you do it anyway. This is sometimes described as defensive forecasting, mental rehearsal aimed less at anxiety itself and more at control, a way of ensuring that whatever happens, you won't be caught unprepared the way you once were in a much more consequential setting. The cost is real mental fatigue, spent on outcomes that were never going to occur. The gift is that when something actually does go wrong, you're rarely blindsided. You've already, quietly, rehearsed it. Sign 8, you're the one people confide in, rarely the reverse. Friends, coworkers, sometimes even strangers, end up telling you things they haven't told anyone else. You listen well. You ask the one follow up question that shows you were really paying attention. You never seem shocked no matter what they share, but you rarely offer that same depth back. This asymmetry often traces to early emotional caretaking roles, situations where being the steady, composed one became a role you learned to play long before you had the emotional bandwidth an adult actually needs for it. The cost is a specific kind of one-sided intimacy, being deeply known by people who don't know you nearly as well in return. The gift is a genuine, well-earned gift for making people feel safe enough to finally say the thing they've been carrying alone. Sign 9. You assign meaning to almost everything. A conversation, a small coincidence, an unexpected kindness from a stranger, none of it passes through you unnoticed. You look for what it means, what it says about the person, the timing, the pattern underneath. This tendency, sometimes called compulsive meaning making, often develops as a coping mechanism, a way of turning confusing or painful experiences into something coherent enough to actually be survived. If everything means something, nothing is simply random and threatening. The cost is a mind that's rarely fully at rest, always quietly interpreting. The gift is a depth of insight into people and situations that most people moving through life without the habit simply never develop. Sign 10. You feel most yourself when you're helping someone else make sense of their pain. Something in you comes alive, not performatively, but genuinely, when you're helping someone untangle a hard situation. It isn't about being needed for its own sake. It's that your own pain finally becomes useful to somebody, even if that somebody is someone else entirely. This is one of the clearest markers researchers associate with post-traumatic growth. The finding that difficult experience, processed rather than avoided, often gets redirected into a genuine capacity to help others navigate similar terrain. The cost is that your own needs can quietly slip down the priority list while you're busy meeting everyone else's. The gift is a kind of purpose that most people spend their whole lives searching for, and that you found, without asking for it, in exactly the place it hurt the most. None of these 10 signs are weaknesses wearing a disguise. They're the fingerprints of a mind that learned to read the world with unusual precision. Because at some point, precision mattered more than comfort. If you recognize yourself in several of these, that's not a coincidence. And it's not something to fix. It's something to understand. The sharpness was built for a reason. What you do with it now is entirely up to you.